What's up? Welcome to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of True Detective Season 4, aka True Detective Night Country. The series is out. I'm going to talk about the finale as well as the series as a whole and kind of relate it back to the previous True Detective seasons. Of course, True Detective, now a long-running anthology crime series grounded as a cop series. And True Detective Season 4 kind of immediately stood out for the first time, grounding the True Detective storytelling in the eyes of women, in this case, two police officers, again, played by Jodie Foster as Chief Danvers and Reis as Trooper Navarro. And yeah, I think this is a pretty engaging season of True Detective. There's been a lot of talk online, I think some of it kind of frustratingly, about comparing True Detective to past seasons and some frustrations people have felt about how it's differed from the past, which I don't really understand given that the show is an anthology. I mean, even Nick Pizzolatto himself, the creator of the series, who was not involved with season 4, he took some kind of shots at Issa Lopez, the creator of Night Country, which I thought was a bit off base. That being said, the Night Country story and then the True Detective bones, the True Detective IP, I don't want to say they're in conflict throughout season 4, but they can definitely kind of brush up against each other. Night Country was conceived on its own, and then HBO kind of pitched it, helped mold it into a True Detective story, using that IP to help get the show off the ground. It does make some sense. But, hard detective work, quote unquote, not really the MO of True Detective Season 4. And to me, I didn't really mind because I was quite engaged by Danvers and Navarro. I thought Jodie Foster really giving you the movie star performance for a movie star part. And Reis, who I'd not really seen act too much, I think really got to blossom as Navarro, as the Navarro character went on her journey throughout the series. And the way True Detective Season 4 begins, it's kind of like a soft fake out of what the show's priorities are going to be, where you think it's going to be about investigating the Salal lab scientists and how they all died out in the ice and what was going on with that. But really, it was more about the Annie K murder. And even more specifically, this was, I think, a show about the individuals and kind of the journeys they're on, as they're all broken people with a lot of personal baggage, a lot of personal demons, and how that kind of contrasts with the general vibe of Ennis, Alaska, which is a place where a lot of people openly believe has some kind of supernatural element to it, has spirits just kind of in and around the community. And of course, the local Inuit, indigenous community is a big part of that, and I think towards the end of the season, the last 2 episodes where it's kind of revealed the conspiracy aspect of what's going on, where the mine had been intensely polluting the land, and the lab had been covering that up because the pollution was actually kind of serving the lab's research interests. And of course, this was to the great detriment of the community and really infecting the indigenous community the most in terms of causing stillborn births and cancers and just obviously poor public health. And of course, Pryor's dad, as a corrupt cop, was involved in some of this cover up. I think, a lot of that kind of core plot, determining what happened, where is Raymond Clark, who actually killed Annie K. All those things I wasn't as super dying to get uncovered, because I was more interested in kind of just how the characters were reacting to everything and keeping their lives together, or lack thereof. Of course, young Pryor as well goes on quite the journey, literally killing his dad and then covering up his death. And I think some pieces of the series probably work better than others, like Christopher Eccleston, who I always enjoy, of course, amazing on The Leftovers. He doesn't have a whole lot to really do on the series as Danvers' superior. I guess the suggestion that he may be in and aware of the cover-up is probably the most interesting thing about him, but it's never really explored too much. Also, Fiona Shaw's character, it's kind of this loner widow. I feel like there was more on the bone there, kind of a waste of Fiona Shaw. She's not really in the series all too much. Early on, I was kind of a bit frustrated with a lot of the time spent with Navarro's sister. But I guess once that she meets her fate and Navarro's journey starts to really move forward, I think it made a lot more sense in how the series worked. I did appreciate in the finale that when Danvers is being like softly interrogated about what had happened by other officers. It's very much framed just exactly how True Detective season one's like present day scenes were framed in terms of how they framed Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey, you know. So that's a nice callback. Of course, Raymond Clark gives the biggest callback of all, dropping the time as a flat circle line to Danvers and Varro. I think this stuff with the Wheeler cover up, like it's not like really. I don't think there wasn't like a whole lot really to it until all of a sudden like Eccleston is like, hey, I know, just so you know, and then it's kind of like juxtaposed where Pryor has to do basically his own version of it. So like ultimately, like I think like some of the beats are more satisfying than others. I did kind of like the revelation of what really happened to the Salal men and how Navarro and Danvers learn about that from the other indigenous women when they kind of just tell them it matter of factly. That was pretty satisfying. Um, I think some of the other stuff in terms of like trying to like all the time spent trying to get to the ice cave, learning what the night country is, some of the overt like ghost like demon stuff. It's like I could take or leave some of that. Like I think it just kind of was a bit slow. Although I did really enjoy when Navarro sees the one Salal guy in the hospital before he dies, and he's like completely possessed, like right out of a horror movie. And the ending kind of, I think, kind of fits everything, right? Where it's very ambiguous. Navarro's fate, whether she is in fact actually alive or her spirit is just visiting Danvers. I actually really like that ending. I like how a lot of stuff isn't super clear, but the emotional journeys are the stuff that actually is like I think the most satisfying, the most clear. So I think ultimately this is going to be like more polarizing in terms of how the plot is progressed and plot is resolved. But because that wasn't the primary focus of the series, I'm pretty into this one overall. I would say this is in line with True Detective Season 3. Certainly has some cool differences too. I think I'd probably actually take this above True Detective Season 3, but of course Season 1 still being the best of the series. I'm hopeful for True Detective to continue to return as an anthology series. We've seen with Fargo on FX that the anthology format is a great way for creators to have fun and take chances and find interesting ways to tell dramatic stories in the loose definition of IP having that safety net for getting the show made. So yeah, we should continue to root for True Detective to exist. I think it's a pretty safe investment for HBO, and season 4 actually is the highest rated version of the season of the series, just edging past season 1 in terms of viewership, which is very impressive. So yeah, True Detective season 4, True Detective Night Country, I think it was a really fun spin. I was really happy that it wasn't just kind of playing the old hits again or trying to be a facsimile of a past season. It's truly getting into the anthology format. And to compare it to Fargo, this was still, I think this still had enough DNA of True Detective to feel fun. Whereas Fargo season 4, for example, famously like took a lot of diversions and ultimately didn't pay off to the right degree. So yeah, True Detective season 4, let me know what you thought of it. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.